In California, more than 700 people have spent time on death row, waiting for an ending that for most of them never comes. Because since 1992, the state has carried out only 13 executions, and the most recent one was back in 2006. 13 cases, 13 different crimes. Some involved a store owner losing his life behind the counter over a small-time robbery. Some involved an elderly homeowner, a cut phone line, and a break-in that turned deadly. Some involved an entire family who never made it out alive, all for a few dozen dollars from a motel cash drawer. Some involved killings ordered from inside prison. No two cases are the same. But before an execution, every person is asked the same two final things: the last meal and the last words. Now, let us begin with the first. Number 1. Robert Lee Massie. On the evening of January 3rd, 1979, in the Twin Peaks area of San Francisco, Boris Bob Naumoff was behind the counter of his liquor store. A small shop, a late shift, the usual routine: ringing up customers, straightening shelves, locking up. For a store owner, it was how he made a living, and it was also where the risk was highest, because anyone could walk in at any time. Robert Lee Massie came in like a normal customer. He went in, stepped out, looked around, and came back. Not yelling, not smashing anything. He went in and out, looked around, and returned. Long enough for the clerk to think it was nothing, and quick enough that when it changed, there was no time to react. Then the robbery happened. The store was tight, the counter close to the aisle, with little room to move. According to court records, while trying to control the situation and take property, Massie fired a gun. Naumoff was shot and lost his life. Another man, Charles Harris, was also shot but survived. For Naumoff, it ended right there behind the counter, with no real chance to protect himself and no second chance to learn from it. His family was left with a hole that never closes, and the store was left as a place that never felt the same. The investigation started with what suspects often ignore: witness statements, a car description, and small details that helped police narrow in. Massie was stopped, arrested, and the case moved through the courts. The legal fight took years, and at one point the conviction was overturned and the case was tried again. But the core did not change. Prosecutors said one man committed a robbery, and a store owner lost his life because of it. Later, Massie said more than once he wanted the sentence carried out quickly, as if he should get to choose how it ends. In the early morning hours of March 27, 2001, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. The last meal was recorded as 2 vanilla milkshakes, French fries, fried oysters, and a soft drink. When asked for his final words, Massie said, "Forgiveness, giving up all hope for a better past." Twin Peaks was left with one truth: Boris Naumoff went down behind the counter, right where he worked, because of a robbery he never chose. Number 2. Stephen Wayne Anderson. In the early morning hours of May 26, 1980, in Bloomington, San Bernardino County, Elizabeth Lyman, 81 years old, was asleep in her small home. In a quiet neighborhood, safety can feel like locked doors, lights off, and the habit of living alone without bothering anyone. Stephen Wayne Anderson broke in. He did not just come to take things. Investigators said he cut the phone line, meaning that if something went wrong, the house was cut off. No call to family, no call to a neighbor, no call to police. Mrs. Lyman woke up. That was the moment when it could have ended if the intruder had run. But Anderson did not run. According to court records, during the confrontation, a shot was fired, and it proved fatal. Elizabeth Lyman did not survive. After that, he searched the home and took a small amount of cash, a little over $100. The number makes it hard to process, a life taken for loose bills. This case did not turn into a mystery because someone did not ignore what felt wrong. A neighbor heard something unusual, sensed something was off, and called police. That call drew the line between a suspect disappearing and a suspect being caught. Officers arrived and arrested Anderson at 3:47 in the morning, right at the scene. There was no time to build a different story. A jury later found this was a homicide committed during a burglary, and Stephen Wayne Anderson was sentenced to death. For Elizabeth Lyman, the story ended that same night, inside her own home. On January 29, 2002, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. The last meal was recorded as 2 grilled cheese sandwiches, cottage cheese, hominy, peach pie, chocolate chip ice cream, and beets. When given the chance to speak, Anderson said nothing. And in that house, what remains is one plain fact: Elizabeth Lyman lost her sense of safety in the one place where she should have had it most. Number 3. Jaturun Siripongs. On the night of December 15, 1981, in Garden Grove, Orange County, Pantai Market had closed for the day. The back area held only the smell of food and the hum of the cooling units. It was the kind of neighborhood store people thought was safe because the faces felt familiar, and that comfort can make people let their guard down. That night, a robbery took place, and it did not stop at money. Two people inside the store, Pakovan, Pat, Watanaporn, and Quachin Gwyn, were forced into the storage area, a tight space with limited exits and little visibility from outside. According to court records, Pat showed signs consistent with asphyxiation, and evidence indicated a knife was used in the attack on Quach. Afterward, the offender left with something many criminals cannot resist: the victim's property. And that choice brought the case back quickly. On December 17, 1981, Jaturun Siripongs was arrested after attempting to use a credit card from the Watanaporn family to make purchases. From that transaction, police followed a trail of related items and movements. The case came together through a chain of evidence, not one big breakthrough, but details that left little room to deny what had happened. A jury found Siripongs guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder committed during a robbery, and he was sentenced to death. Later, he claimed there had been an accomplice who was directly responsible for the fatal acts, but he never named anyone. For the victims' families, statements like that did not bring clarity. They only closed off the chance for complete answers. On February 9, 1999, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. Siripongs' last meal was recorded as 2 cups of Mission Pride canned peaches and 2 cans of Lucky Arctic iced tea. When given the opportunity to speak, Siripongs said nothing. Pantai Market closed that night, and 2 people never returned to their work behind the counter: Pat Watanaporn and Quachin Gwyn. Number 4. Donald Beardslee. On April 25, 1981, in San Mateo County, California. This was not a case of sudden anger. It unfolded like something arranged in advance, and 2 young women stepped into it without realizing what was waiting. The victims were Patty Gedling, age 23, and Stacy Benjamin, age 19, close friends who lived together. The situation centered on a drug deal and a dispute over money or product. When even a small debt turns into a reason for payback, things can cross the line fast. The group that pulled Patty and Stacy into it included William Forrester and James Rutherford. Donald Beardslee provided his apartment as the place to collect the debt, but he did more than offer space. Prosecutors said Beardslee told someone to buy duct tape, the kind of item used to silence and restrain. That detail mattered. It suggested planning, not a sudden decision. That day, the 2 women were separated. Once that happened, they lost the last protection they had: the ability to account for each other in real time. A jury later concluded that a gun was used against Patty, and evidence indicated a knife was used against Stacy. Different methods, but the same purpose: control of the scene and eliminating witnesses to cover up what had happened. The case broke open over something small. Among Patty's belongings was a shoe repair ticket with Beardslee's phone number on it. Police called the number. Beardslee came in, and investigators said his statements helped them piece together the rest, including what others had tried to hide. A jury found Beardslee guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced him to death, not because of debt alone, but because of the choices made after that dispute: restraining the victims, separating them, and taking their lives to remove witnesses. On January 19, 2005, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. Beardslee declined a last meal and requested only grapefruit juice. When offered final words, Beardslee said nothing. And that is not the part worth holding on to. The names that matter are the 2 young women, Patty Gedling and Stacy Benjamin. Number 5. Thomas Martin Thompson. On the night of November 9, 1981, in Orange County, California, Ginger Lorraine Fleischle, age 20, went out with people she knew. Nights like that usually end with a goodbye, a call home, and the next day, still feeling normal. But that night, Ginger walked into a 1-bedroom apartment, not knowing she would be cut off from help. According to the jury's findings, Ginger was restrained, and a sexual assault occurred. When she said she would go to police, prosecutors said the situation shifted to a calculated decision: eliminate the witness. Her body was later moved and left in a remote area near Irvine. Several days later, on November 14, 1981, Ginger was found. From that point on, her family was left with a question that never settles: why her? The investigation led back to the apartment. Physical evidence and the timeline of movements pointed to 2 names. Then came a twist that drew even more attention at the time. Thompson and Leach fled to Mexico. Leach was arrested after returning to the United States. Thompson was located and detained in Mexico, then returned to face trial. An Orange County jury found Thompson guilty of rape and first-degree murder with the special circumstance of murder committed during rape, and he was sentenced to death. Leach was convicted of second-degree murder and received a sentence of 15 years to life. The case moved through the courts for years, and until the end, Thompson maintained his innocence. Even in his final statement, he claimed authorities had the wrong man. On July 14, 1998, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection, closing the case. Thompson's last meal was recorded like a full spread: king crab with butter, spinach salad, pork fried rice, Mandarin-style ribs, a hot fudge sundae, and 6 cans of Coca-Cola. The contrast was hard to miss. He was allowed to choose. Ginger Fleischle was not. When it was time for final words, Thompson repeated his claim of innocence, saying, "For 17 years, the Attorney General has been pursuing the wrong man. In time, he will come to know this. God bless." For Ginger's family, those words did not bring answers. They only left the question standing. Number 6. Manuel Manny Babbitt. On the night of December 18, 1980, in South Sacramento, Leah Schendel, age 78, was inside her apartment. No safe, no big target, just an older woman living alone, trusting that a locked door would be enough to get through the night. Manuel Manny Babbitt forced his way in. According to court records, it did not stop at theft. Mrs. Schendel was assaulted, and prosecutors alleged a sexual assault and an attempted rape while he searched the apartment. There was no safe and no major payoff. Only a woman alone and an intruder who pushed everything past the line. Sources later described Mrs. Schendel as losing her life during the attack. The next night, Babbitt was accused of targeting another woman, a robbery, and an attempted sexual assault. The case turned on a detail came from inside the family. According to later news accounts, Babbitt's brother read about the homicide, noticed a lighter engraved with the initials LS in his brother's room, and contacted authorities. It was a call with consequences. It meant facing the worst possibility about someone close to him. From there, investigators traced links and physical evidence that tightened the case around Babbitt. A jury found Babbitt guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances during a burglary and robbery, along with robbery and sexual assault-related charges, and he was sentenced to death. In later years, the case was often discussed because Babbitt was a Vietnam War veteran and received a Purple Heart while on death row. But that did not change what happened in Sacramento. An older woman was attacked inside her own apartment. On May 4, 1999, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. He declined a last meal. When given the chance to speak, Babbitt said, "I forgive all of you." But a final line cannot undo the night Leah Schendel was turned into a target inside the place where she should have been safest. Number 7. Robert Alton Harris. On the morning of July 5, 1978, in San Diego, California, 2 teenagers, John Majewski and Michael Baker, stopped at a fast food place. It was an ordinary morning until Robert Alton Harris and his brother Daniel approached them in the parking lot. Harris used a 9mm handgun to take control. The boys were forced into their own car and made to drive away from the busy area. This was not a scare tactic. Prosecutors said it was a kidnapping to obtain transportation. When the car reached a remote location, a shot was fired, and both teenagers lost their lives. 2 young lives were exchanged for a vehicle, and the most disturbing part is how it unfolded, like a step in a plan, not a mistake. Later that same day, the brothers used the stolen car to rob a bank, wearing ski masks and taking about $2,000. The sequence moved straight through: kidnapping, a fatal attack, car theft, bank robbery. No pause to turn back. No sign of remorse described in the record. The case came together quickly because someone chose to act. A witness spotted the suspicious car, followed it to a residence, and called police. At about 1:05 in the afternoon, San Diego police officers entered the home and arrested both brothers. A search recovered unfired 9mm ammunition and clothing linked to the bank robbery, partially burned in a fireplace. Daniel gave a detailed statement, and police were led to the 2 victims. There was little room left for another story. A jury found Robert Alton Harris guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances during a kidnapping, and he was sentenced to death. In the years that followed, the case became a series of last-minute court fights. Even the night before the execution, stays were issued and then lifted, back and forth, as the clock kept moving. On April 21, 1992, the sentence was carried out in the gas chamber, marking California's first execution in 25 years. His last meal included 2 large pizzas, a bucket of fried chicken, and ice cream. When asked for final words, Harris said, "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everyone dances with the Grim Reaper." Nothing changes what happened in that parking lot. 2 teenagers were taken away, and they never came back. Number 8. Clarence Ray Allen. In September of 1980, in Fresno, California, an armed robbery unfolded at Fran's Market, a neighborhood grocery store. Within minutes, 3 people lost their lives, and 1 person survived to tell investigators what happened. At first glance, it looked like a robbery that turned deadly. But as the investigation moved forward, the story shifted. The focus was not only Fresno. It led behind bars. Prosecutors alleged the person directing it was Clarence Ray Allen, an inmate who was not at the scene, but was accused of controlling it from prison. The story reached back to 1974. Allen was accused of being behind an earlier plan to break into Fran's Market, using keys and the alarm system to gain access. When that plot was exposed, the people who could speak about it became a problem. One of them was Brian Schledowitz, tied to the earlier break-in being uncovered, and later one of the 3 people killed in the 1980 shooting at Fran's Market. By the late 1970s, Allen was already serving a serious sentence. That is what made the case stand out. Investigators said prison did not end his influence. Inside, Allen connected with Billy Ray Hamilton. When Hamilton was released, the jury later concluded the plan was direct, returned to Fran's Market, and turned potential witnesses into targets. The robbery in September 1980 ended with 3 deaths: Brian Schledowitz, Douglas Scott White, and Josephine Linda Rocha. Prosecutors argued this was not violence that simply got out of control. They said it was violence used to erase evidence and send a message that speaking up could cost you your life. Investigators traced the case backward, from the crime scene to the prison. When Hamilton was arrested in another matter, records and connections led back to Allen. A jury found Allen guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, along with conspiracy, and he was sentenced to death. In the early morning of January 17, 2006, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. His last meal included buffalo steak, white meat fried chicken from KFC, fried bread, sugar-free pecan pie, sugar-free black walnut ice cream, and whole milk. In his final statement, he described the meal as very good, then said, "Hoka, hey, it's a good day to die. Thank you very much. I love you all. Goodbye." And what gives this case its weight is the jury's conclusion that someone behind bars could still be held responsible for directing the deaths of others through lists, instructions, and fear. Number 9. Keith Daniel Williams. In 1978, in Merced County, California, a car deal worth about $1,500 began at a yard sale and ended with 3 deaths. Miguel Vargas agreed to sell the car. Keith Daniel Williams wrote a check and took the vehicle paperwork. But afterward, Williams decided to go back to take back the check and the documents, as if a deal could be erased through violence. According to court records, Williams returned to the Vargas home with a purely self-serving goal, and he brought the one thing that turns a dispute into a tragedy: a gun. Miguel Vargas and Salvador Vargas were shot and lost their lives inside the home. Over a car and a check, 2 lives were cut short in the place where they should have been safest. Then a 3rd person was pulled into it. Lourdes Meza disappeared and was found days later in a different area. Prosecutors said she was kidnapped and harmed before she lost her life. At that point, this was no longer about taking something back. It was violence used to remove witnesses and reduce risk, leaving a 3rd family searching in desperation. Investigators traced the case back to the yard sale and to the person who had been with Williams, Robert Leslie Tyson. As the evidence closed in, later news reports said Williams confessed after his arrest. The confession did not lessen what happened. It simply ended any hope for those waiting to hear that someone might still be alive. A jury found Williams guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, and he was sentenced to death. In the early morning hours of May 3, 1996, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. At the time, it was only the 2nd time California had used that method. Williams' last meal included fried pork chops, a baked potato with butter, asparagus, salad with blue cheese dressing, apple pie, and whole milk. When given the opportunity to speak, he said nothing. A $1,500 check ended in 3 funerals because someone chose a gun instead of walking away. Number 10. Stanley Tookie Williams. In the early morning hours of February 28, 1979, in Whittier, Los Angeles County, at a 7-Eleven convenience store, Albert Lewis Owens, age 24, was working the night shift. Bright neon lights, the checkout counter, the steady hum of refrigerators. A shift meant to stay quiet, so he could go home and sleep. Then a group of people walked in carrying a shotgun. According to court records, within minutes, Owens fell inside the store and lost his life. Cash was taken from the register, not an amount that would make anyone rich. But what was really taken was a life, and a family's normal morning. Another morning brought another scene. At about 5:30 in the morning on March 11th, 1979, on South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles, at the Brookhaven Motel, a place where one family both lived and worked, where home and livelihood shared the same walls, a forced entry occurred and shots were fired. 3 members of the managing family lost their lives: Tsai Shai Yang, age 67, Yen Ai Yang, age 63, and Ye Chen Lin, age 43. Records put the amount taken at about $50, loose cash from a drawer, traded for 3 lives. At trial, a jury found Stanley Tookie Williams guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances and found that he was the person who used the gun in the crimes. Williams continued to maintain his innocence. That is what kept the case in public debate for years, not only in court filings, but because Tookie was not an unknown name. He was known as a co-founder of the Crips, a street gang in Los Angeles. While in prison, Williams wrote books against gang life, and some saw that as change. But the conviction did not change, and neither did the fact that 4 people were gone. In the early morning hours of December 13th, 2005, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. Williams did not request a last meal. Earlier, he drank milk. When given the opportunity to speak, he said nothing. For Owens and the Yang family, there were no final words at all, only a night shift and a morning that never finished. Number 11. David Edwin Mason. In March of 1980, in Oakland, California, the door of an elderly woman's home did not open. Neighbors found that strange and called police. When officers entered, Joan Picard, age 73, was found deceased inside her own home. There was no chase outside, no chance to call for help, just a quiet house and a life that had ended. Then there was another house, then another, and the victims were elderly people living alone. According to court records, Mason was not someone who picked at random. With Picard, he had known her and done small jobs for her. Before, he knew the layout, the routines, and even that she had an alarm button. That meant he walked in with familiarity, while the homeowner had no time to react. During 1980, other homes in Oakland fell into the same pattern. Elderly people targeted while alone, inside the very place meant to keep them safe. Records described some dawn deaths as showing signs consistent with asphyxiation, and others involving blunt force. Cash and belongings were taken, things that can be replaced. Lives cannot. Investigators arrested Mason, and what stood out was how much he talked. After his arrest, he gave detailed statements and led investigators to related locations. He even recorded a confession tape addressed to his family and titled it Epitaph. Later, he recanted. But by then, 4 cases from 1980 shared too many similarities to be dismissed as coincidence. And the violence did not stop once Mason was jailed. In 1982, inside the Alameda County Jail, he was convicted of killing another inmate, Boyd Johnson. Records noted an attempt to make the scene look like something else. In the early morning hours of August 24th, 1993, the sentence was carried out in the gas chamber. Mason voluntarily gave up further appeals to move quickly to the end. He did not request a last meal, asking only for a glass of ice water in the holding area. When asked if he wished to change his mind, he said, "No, Warden. I want to proceed." "Thank you, Warden." There were no formal final words. Number 12. Darrell Keith Rich. In the summer of 1978, in Shasta County, Northern California, someone left home and did not return. Then another. Then another. Each missing person report, each search, each evening with family members waiting by the door. And each time, the answer came back in the harshest way. According to court records, Annette Faye Edwards was among the first victims. She was attacked and lost her life, with evidence indicating severe violence that left no chance to fight back. This was not a sudden struggle. Prosecutors said it was deliberate, someone forcing their way into another person's life and leaving after taking everything. Then came Patricia Ann Moore. Prosecutors said she was taken to a remote area, restrained, and killed. The same region, the same summer, and the same method of cutting off any way back. Then there was Linda Diane Slavic. Records show she was lured to Rich's home in Cottonwood, held against her will, then taken to an isolated location and shot. Some cases ended with blunt violence, others with gunfire. The common point was that the victims were taken to places where no one could intervene, not because of panic, but because the offender chose the quickest way to end it. And then came the case that shook the community. Annette Lynn Seelix disappeared while running an errand. Investigators said she was abducted and showed signs of an attack. Her body was later found beneath the Johns Creek Bridge. The location made it clear she had been taken somewhere no one could reach her in time. What led to Rich's arrest came from his own words. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, he told an acquaintance that he had found a body, then agreed to take a polygraph test and failed. He later made statements, part boast and part fabrication, claiming someone had paid $7,000 to kill and gave cold responses when questioned further. Those words made their way back to investigators. He was arrested, then provided additional statements, turned over a firearm, and shared further details. In the early morning hours of March 15, 2000, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection. Rich declined a last meal. Before the execution, he drank tea, broth, and Gatorade. His final word was a single one: peace. One short word could not cover a long summer in which families lost loved ones, and homes were never the same again. Number 13. William George Bonin. Late at night in 1979, in Los Angeles County, Southern California, patrol lights illuminated dirt near the edge of a freeway. Not an accident, not someone who had fallen asleep. A body left where traffic would pass by in the morning, as if nothing had happened. Then another call, another roadside discovery. The feeling across the area became clear. Someone was using the freeways as a place to leave victims' bodies. According to court records, the cases targeted young men, many of them hitchhiking or stranded. The approach was simple. A van pulled over, an offer of a ride, and the sliding door closed. From that moment on, the victim was pulled into a confined space, with no control over speed, direction, or destination. In many cases, victims were restrained, assaulted, and killed, with signs consistent with asphyxiation. It drew no gunfire and little attention. Afterward, bodies were left along freeway routes, a silent message that stepping into the wrong vehicle could make someone disappear. Records also showed there was a period when Bonin did not act alone. Accomplices were present, helping restrain victims and block escape. That left even fewer chances to survive, and marked the crimes as repeated and deliberate, not impulsive acts. The arrest came sooner than many expected, because one victim survived long enough to bring attention at the right moment. In early June of 1980, police stopped the van and intervened while the victim was still alive and being restrained inside. From there, earlier pieces, roadside discoveries, and investigative leads were pulled together into a single case. Bonin was sentenced to death in Los Angeles County for multiple cases, and later received additional death sentences in Orange County for others. In the early morning hours of February 23, 1996, the sentence was carried out by lethal injection, California's first execution using that method. Beforehand, he ordered 2 large pepperoni and sausage pizzas, 3 pints of coffee ice cream, and 3 packs of 6 Coca-Cola cans. His final statement focused on opposing the death penalty and urging young people to stop and think before committing serious crimes. For those who stepped into that van, everything ended the moment the sliding door closed. No warning, no way back.